The Damaging Effect of a Lack of Representative Literature on School Campuses by Michael Chad Knesek. The student population in schools across the nation are becoming increasingly more culturally diverse. As schools tout meeting every child where they are, there is an apparent lack of diverse literature stemming from adopted curriculum that exponentially increases the possibility of damage to students by consciously or subconsciously negating students' cultural identities. Certainly, while literature choices associated with and required for curriculum should be made in accordance with ensuring that students are provided resources that promote academic success, every effort should also be made to recognize the importance of and provide representative literature that promotes student self-awareness and self-confidence by way of its diversity and representation, both in characterization and content. Current literature associated with district curriculums does not reflect students' cultural identities. Research has shown that culturally diverse literature has the capacity to improve student self-esteem and personal awareness through appropriate representative identification of themselves in provided literature. As of late, considering the political climate and increasing calls for recognition of marginalized people around the world, there's also been a call to expand literature associated with and mandated by district curriculum to ensure that different cultural backgrounds are equally, or at the very least, adequately representative of the students. The research is clear that culturally representative literature holds great promise for promoting lifelong readers in that novels featuring relatable characters can create incentives for reading both inside and outside the classroom. In celebrated poet Nancy Larrick's 1965 article, The All-White World of Children's Books, she insists that if children never see themselves in books, they receive the subtle message that they are not important enough to appear in books and that books are not for them. Conversely, if children see only themselves in books they read, they come to the conclusion that those who are different from them are not worthy of appearing in books. With Larrick's article written over 50 years ago, it is evident that the argument for education that purposefully takes into account the cultural identity and life experiences of its students has been raging for decades, and more than likely will continue to do so far into the future. Students of all cultural backgrounds deserve educational materials that represent their backgrounds and life experiences as a matter of respect, and in the case of many already failing, marginalized students, as a matter of urgency. Myers contends that all children, not just those who belong to the majority culture, have a right to read stories depicting their lives and experiences. Considering the background and continued depiction of education as it relates primarily to white students in order to educate them to become responsible, contributing citizens, the need to take all students' cultural backgrounds into consideration has never been so great in the world. It must be noted, however, that Boyd and Galda emphasize the fact that although gains have been made, there are still not enough books being published that are outside of the white, middle-class, heterosexual world. To educate all children appropriately, teachers need more books that depict diverse lifestyles, opportunities, beliefs, choices, and worldviews, in addition to books that focus on the status quo. Inaccurate portrayals of literary characters continue to undermine the positive contributions of diverse students, and insensitive portrayals still pervade literature. Multicultural education expert James Banks noted the possible negative effects of this portrayal in that Books that present inaccurate portrayals of people of color confuse children, reinforce stereotypes, and can even be the source of harmful misconceptions for both children of color and white children. Dewey notes that not all experiences are educative, and that some may be considered miseducative in that it has the effect of arresting or distorting the growth of further experience. It is this miseducation that John Dewey speaks of that can transpire from inaccurate and insensitive portrayals in literature that does not appropriately address diversity. Considering the importance that life experiences play in educating a student, Dewey states, whatever is uppermost in his mind constitutes for him, for the time being, the whole universe. That universe is fluid and fluent. Its contents dissolve and reform with amazing rapidity. But, after all, it is the child's own world. It has the unity and completeness of his own life. To that end, a student attending school who is not exposed to characters in literature that do not reflect their skin color, upbringing, cultural background, successes, and struggles will be unable to make a relevant, lasting connection to the material, and ultimately be unable to achieve Dewey's ultimate goal of reflective thought. Dewey spends a great deal of time in his writings discussing the ongoing argument between traditional and progressive education, and there is a distinct correlation between his teachings and the need for diversity in literature that is available on school campuses. Traditional education sees experiences as being somewhat of an inferior method of transferring information and has no connection or relevancy to current life or the past. Dewey says, the subject matter of education consists of bodies of information and of skills that have been worked out in the past. Therefore, the chief business of the school is to transmit them to the new generation. Progressive education, according to Dewey, takes into account the student's life experiences and backgrounds as a primary source. In this regard, Dewey explains that the argument between traditional and progressive education cannot be summed up as an either-or choice to be made, but rather should be contingent upon the teacher acting as a purposeful facilitator that includes the student's life experiences and background. With that said, traditional education, being a one-size-fits-all model of education, doesn't lie in agreement with the progressive ideal in that literature should delve across color lines and life experiences. The progressive model of education, according to Dewey, most assuredly takes into consideration all students, both in background and life experiences, as a means of educating the whole student. In conclusion, Paulo Freire, the Brazilian educator who emphasized the power and potential of education as a vehicle for liberation, wrote against the traditional banking model of education, which coincides with Dewey's traditional model, wherein the classroom is organized from the standpoint of the narrator, the teacher, imparting information to the patient listening subjects, or the students. As the students listen and absorb the material, there is no emphasis placed on context within their own lives, and therefore the students are unable to relate to, or quite frankly, maintain an acceptable level of engagement. Students who are exposed to literature that embodies the reader's identity and is within the context of their own lives and experiences are granted the opportunity to think in terms of how that information is purposeful for them now and in the future.